More specifically, she told you she wanted to get together, and you were not interested but wanted to stay friends. Story 1. She kept talking about guys she hooked up with in graphic detail. Heard from a friend that she was trying to make me jealous and stimulate a response from me. Instead, I emotionally disengaged from the first time she told me. Story 2. I was in my first year of university and very insecure about girls. This attractive foreign girl, whom I didn't know at the time, tried to get with me for a long time, but my insecurities made me think she was just being friendly. At some point, she realized it and became hostile towards me in her attitude. At the time, I was so confused. Story 3. Yes, I had a longtime friend who was a great drinking and party buddy but was a hot mess emotionally and mentally. She was pretty normal around her friends, but once she started dating, she became this super clingy, insecure, mentally abusive person who thrived on toxic relationships. I had watched her absolutely destroy several great relationships with good men. Because we were fairly blunt friends, I had told her a number of times that she needed to get herself together and work on herself a bit before trying to date again, but she would just shrug it off and move on to the next man. After about 7 years of friendship, she and I were drinking with a couple of friends in a bar one day when she asked me why I had never made a pass at her. I told her that we were friends and I did not really want anything beyond that. She responded with, "Well, I want you, and I think you should be my next boyfriend." Not wanting to become another casualty in her romantic history, I reiterated that I was not looking for anything more from her. I tried to be kind, but she absolutely flipped out when I turned her down. She started screaming in the bar that I was a jerk, that I thought I was too good for her, that she was too good for me, and that she hoped I would end up old and lonely because I was passing up the best opportunity of my life. And then she stormed out, never spoke to me again, not one single word. I heard years later that she eventually came out as a butch lesbian, which somewhat explains some of her destructive relationship habits with men. She apologized to a few former mutual friends for the way she had treated them over the years, blaming most of her issues on her mental struggle with accepting her own identity. I can respect that, and I would have told her so, but she never reached out to me. Story 4. Because despite her being an absolutely wonderful person whom I love, I knew we wouldn't work out over the long run. When you've dated enough, you can tell when there are romantic incompatibilities, especially when you've experienced them firsthand with someone else. She's still one of my closest friends to this day, and I've never regretted maintaining our friendship instead of taking it elsewhere, and she feels the same. Edit. Thanks for the awards, you all. Story 5. Yes, she was nice, but I just didn't have romantic chemistry with her. I was gentle with her. I didn't go into details, but told her I just didn't feel the same way. She didn't take it well and told all of our friends I rejected her because she was overweight. I told them yes, that was part of it, but the much bigger issue was that she would do something like trash me to our friends when I didn't give her something she wasn't entitled to in the first place. We didn't have romantic chemistry for a variety of reasons. Different personalities, different priorities, different relationship wants and needs, and no physical attraction on my side. It was all very obvious to someone who wasn't focused just on her own wants. She ignored me, repeatedly declining to engage with her like that, including rebuffing her grabbing parts of my body before I talked to her about it. The fact that she reacted the way she did confirmed that this was someone I would in no way have any interest in being with. Story 6. She was a coworker who had a type A personality and was very loud. I, by contrast, am very reserved, and her constant obvious flirting made me feel uncomfortable. I am a friendly person by nature, so I probably led her on without even knowing it. She was friendly enough, but I didn't have any feelings for her. She flat out asked if I wanted to date, and I said I would prefer to be coworkers. She was annoyed, and now we don't talk. So this post has many upvotes. I'm confused as to why. Was I at fault here? Story 7. A girl asked me out in high school. She was sociable, pretty, adventurous, ambitious, and intelligent, so I assumed it was a prank or a joke. This had been done to me before in middle school, and said no, telling her she would be bored with me. Friends told me later she was serious. Story 8. She made it clear through her actions before asking me out that I was never her first choice. Be that through dating or hooking up with other guys or just treating me like a basic friend. Eventually, I learned that I needed to treat myself better and not accept a second-place relationship. The result is that I still love her like a sister, but we're never going to be in a relationship because I now have self-respect. How did she react? She basically brushed it off like it never happened. Story 9. Yes, she was attractive and she seemed interested in me. But the form of that interest would have been me listening to her without interrupting her. I tested this hypothesis in a conversation or two. That's how I know. She wasn't malicious. She was able to talk uninterrupted, seemingly without the need or desire for anyone else to contribute to the conversation. So I maintained the friendship at work but stopped the outside of work contact. She seemed a little confused, but we were never an official couple to begin with. She easily found a new guy to talk to. Story 10. I lost my wife of 32 years a few years back. Recently, before the pandemic, a woman at church had been very unsubtle insinuating herself into my affairs for a few months. I was asked to do the scripture reading one Sunday, and it was a passage from Paul the Apostle about how women should basically sit down and be quiet in church. Super cringy. Anyway, as we were leaving the sanctuary afterward, I casually mentioned that it was obvious the pastor had chosen a single man, me, to read such a contentious passage. Her response was to bat her eyes and say to me, "You're only single because you choose to be single." I gave her a blank stare for a few seconds and coldly replied, "When the person you plan to grow old with suddenly passes away, that isn't a choice." Harsh, I know, but message received. She's no longer throwing herself at me. And to be honest, being cooped up due to pandemic restrictions probably had a lot to do with it, giving her time to cool her jets. Story 11. I friend-zoned my friend's sister since I was just coming out of a relationship at the time. She and I had fooled around a bit and were friends beforehand. Then I got a serious girlfriend for an extended period of time. When I broke up with my girlfriend, my friend's sister took her shot and I declined. She was disappointed, but we still remained close friends. A few years later, we started hanging out more and more, eventually just evolving into a relationship, then engagement, then marriage. Our relationship is great because we were great friends beforehand. Story 12. She was a good friend of mine who I met through my work. We worked very well together and had strong professional chemistry and produced some excellent work together. She asked me out, we went on a few dates, and I just didn't feel a spark. She took it very well, and now she's dating another friend of mine, and we're all still good friends and collaborators to this day. Story 13. Oh boy. For once I do feel like I have something to share. So we were close friends for a year at that point, and she eventually told me that she wanted more from our relationship. We were in high school, and given that she used to be in a relationship with a friend of mine, I declined. She said she preferred that we stop talking at that point because it might hurt her in the long run. I kind of acted like nothing happened, and she couldn't really stop talking to me. She was pretty upset sometimes that I was acting like I could be her boyfriend, but I did not do anything about it. At one point, I realized that I was indeed acting like her boyfriend, and that I should probably make things right. So I made a move, and now we've been together for 8 years, and we just bought a house. Now she keeps telling her friend that the friend zone is not always a dead end. Story 14. I started hanging out with this girl that I knew from high school. We had pretty nice talks and all, but I really had no interest in dating her or anyone actually, due to a recent breakup. She was very active with text messages, always telling me what she was doing, watching, and listening to. Not really my thing, but hey, a friend is a friend. Then she started sending me pictures of her taking showers. Nothing really sexual, but weird either way, right? I started to realize that she wanted more than just my friendship. So I kind of got colder, not replying as much and not accepting her invitations to go out. A few weeks later, she texted me saying that she liked me a lot and wanted to start dating me. I replied by saying that I really enjoyed her company but was not interested in her in that way. I guess she didn't like that very much, because she stopped talking to me after that. A shame, really, I enjoyed talking to her. Story 15. A girl was interested in me and my friend. She flirted with both of us and asked me out. I declined and she cried. It was probably the first instance of putting friends before romantic interests. It was just weird how she was all nonchalant about the situation and then cried when I denied her. Years later, after my divorce, I went on a Tinder binge. I dated the first girl who showed interest. I decided she was a rebound, and I didn't want to ruin either of our mental health, so I left. She didn't take it well. One day she'd message saying I was a bad person, the next she missed the physical connection, and the next day she'd call me a terrible person. From then on, every girl I talked to, I specifically said friends only, and leading with that was pretty good for everyone. Story 16. To make it even more pointed, we were in the early stages of a relationship as well. We had great chemistry, the sex was off the charts great, and we had a similar sense of humor. She was a very charming, outgoing, and intelligent woman. That being said, very early on, she was adamant about wanting to get married and had a strong desire to have children, so to speak. After being in a previous relationship where I was abused physically and manipulated emotionally, I wasn't quite ready for that level of commitment and permanence. I wanted to keep it light and breezy and on a timeline that was more gradual, with an eye towards the future. I was honest about our timelines not quite meshing, and we agreed that being friends wasn't perfect or what everyone wanted, but it was for the best. She deserves to be happy, and I couldn't give it to her in that state. A few weeks later, I introduced her to a good friend of mine, and less than a year later, they were married and expecting. They now have a beautiful child and the idyllic life she always wanted. We still text, mostly terrible dad jokes, and we still exchange Christmas cards every year as well. She's a good person, and while I couldn't provide the happiness and completeness she wanted, I'm happy she found what she deserved. Story 17. Yes, I was a bartender in college, and one of the regulars approached me one day and claimed we were distant cousins or something. Our extended families are from the same area, and it sounded like she knew more than I did because she would bring it up constantly, so I went along with it. Fast forward a couple of weeks later when she started refusing to buy drinks from any bartender other than me, asking me to come cuddle after work, etc. I freaked out and asked my family if they knew of her or her family. Found no connection whatsoever. I'll admit that she was pretty hot, but that friend-zoned her for life. Probably shouldn't have led off with, "I think you're my distant cousin." Story 18. I did, but that's because my dumb self thought she was joking or something. Poor girl had the courage to confess to me twice. She was a popular girl, kind, pretty good at math and cute. My dumb self, on the other hand, was a quiet, introverted guy. Anyway, we are dating for 2 months now after she confessed to me for the third time. Story 19. There was a girl I was kind of friends with at university. We got on, and there was a spark, but I didn't really have feelings for her. Kind of stupidly ended up kissing when we were on a night out with a group of friends, and she was a lot more into me than I was into her. Again, I made a mistake by going out on a date when I should have just nipped things in the bud. Ended up kissing again on the date, and it was only after that I had to tell her I wasn't interested in taking things further. The first kiss was just a bit of a drunken mistake, but going on a date was a mistake on my part, and I only did it because I didn't really know how to turn a girl down without hurting her feelings or making it awkward at that point in my life. She got pretty upset and called me a lot, and that made it kind of too awkward to stay friends. Story 20. More than once, different reasons for different occasions. I was in a relationship already. I was married. I didn't find her attractive. She was in a relationship with someone I knew. She was married. Story 21. Friend-zoned her because one of my buddies really liked her. There was no immediate reaction, but I think she slowly understood why when I started teasing her to my friend. This was way back in high school. I think her crush on me was completely just infatuation and not based on anything real. They're married with 3 kids now. We're not in touch anymore because I moved away a long time ago. I sometimes see their posts on Facebook and they look very happy. Story 22. I was around 15 or 16 at that time when she, 19, told me that she was beautiful, sweet, kind, thoughtful, and maybe everything you might want to find in someone you like. But I really wasn't interested. My friends were so surprised I didn't try working things out with her because she was literally their crush, had her own house, car, and she ran her own business. She was quite persistent, to the point where she picked me up from my house to go to church together and dropped me off afterwards. She didn't take it well when I told her that, and she thought it would be better if she distanced herself from me. Story 23. She did not tell me, but several of my friends told me she was interested. I was not attracted to her, so I avoided her when I could. Eventually, she found someone for herself. Story 24. I had one that I worked with who was incredibly cool. We played video games together like the same movies, great girl. She had an eye issue that I could not deal with. I'm a horrible person. I know this. I told her that I appreciated her and her telling me that she liked me but that I wasn't available emotionally at that point. Didn't mention the eye at all because it's not something she could control. She immediately stopped all contact with me, ended up getting another job about 3 weeks later, and I never heard from her again.